Welcome to CodeRef. While I was scrolling through awards for some inspiration for the new video, I came across this portfolio site, and this flip card animation instantly caught my attention. So I decided to rebuild it using GSAP and React. The original version was built using Framer, but while recreating it with GSAP, I ran into an interesting challenge. Since the card flips 180 degrees each time, after 2 flips it comes back to the first side instead of showing the third project. So to solve that, I divided the content into 2 separate cards to properly showcase all 4 projects. And here's my version of the animation. As the first card flips, it moves out of the frame, and the second card comes in, then continues flipping as you scroll. You can check out the original website, link in the description. This kind of animation works really well for portfolios, product showcases, or storytelling sections where you reveal content step by step. If you enjoy these kinds of animations, consider subscribing, leave a like, and let me know in the comments if you want a full breakdown of the entire website. Now, let's flip into the code and see how this works. First, after installing GSAP and GSAP for React, import the required packages, GSAP, use GSAP, ScrollTrigger, and ScrollSmoother, and register them so we can use them in our animations. Then, we set up ScrollSmoother using use GSAP. Inside it, we create a ScrollSmoother instance and define a few options like smooth scrolling, enabling effects, and a lower smooth value for touch devices. Then, we wrap our main content inside these 2 divs, Smooth Wrapper and Smooth Content, and place our flipcard component inside. This setup is required for ScrollSmoother to work properly. With this in place, let's move into the card face component. This component handles rendering each side of the card based on the project data. This component takes project data and an isBack flag as props, which determines which side we're rendering. If there's no project data, we simply return null. Then we define some styles. Back face visibility is set to hidden so the flipped side doesn't show through during the animation, and we conditionally rotate the card by 180 degrees when it's the back face. This is what allows us to create that realistic flip effect. Now, let's move on to the structure. Inside the main div, we have 2 parts, an image wrapper and the content section. First, we style the main container. Using inset 0 with absolute positioning makes it cover the entire card area. We add rounded corners, overflow hidden, and a dark background. Then we apply backdrop blur, shadow, and a subtle border to give it that glassy look. We also use group for hover effects, and flex with flexcall to structure the content vertically. Finally, we apply the face style for the flip effect. Now, we create the image wrapper. The outermost section will have some padding from all sides and a bit more from the top. Inside this, we create a container for the image. It's positioned relative, with a fixed height, rounded corners, and overflow hidden. Then we add the image, using the project image as the source and title as the alt text. We make it cover the full area using object cover, along with a smooth scale effect on hover using group hover. On top of that, we add a gradient overlay from bottom to top, which helps improve text visibility, especially when the image has lighter areas, and also adds a bit more depth to the design. Next, we have the content section. The outermost wrapper has padding on the sides and bottom, margin top set to auto to push it to the bottom, and uses flex to align items with space between. Inside this, on the left, we have the text content, starting with the title, styled to be bold and prominent. Below that, we have a small row using flex, with some gap and alignment, containing the tag and subtitle. The tag is styled like a small pill with a dynamic background color coming from the project data. The subtitle uses smaller text, reduced opacity, and increased letter spacing to give it a more subtle, minimal look. On the right side, we have a circular icon container with fixed width and height, centered content, a border, and a subtle background, along with a smooth hover effect using group. Here, switch the tracking unit from RAM to M. Now, let's move to the flipcard component, and import the card face component along with GSAP and use GSAP. Before moving forward, let's quickly look at the assets file. Here, we import images and define an array of projects with title, subtitle, tag, color, and image, used to render the cards dynamically. We import the project's data. Then, we group them into pairs, so each card can handle 2 projects for the flip animation. After that, we create a container ref for the main wrapper, and an array of refs to track each card, making sure it's an array, otherwise it can cause issues when handling multiple elements. Inside the main wrapper, we add a full-screen spacer with centered text. This creates some space before we move to the card section. Next, we have the main card section. We first attach the container ref, which we'll use for our animations. Then for styling, it takes the full screen, uses relative positioning, hides overflow, and centers everything using flex. Then, we loop through the grouped projects using map, where each pair represents 1 card. Inside this, we create a wrapper div for each card. We assign a ref here to store each card element inside our card refs array, using the index, so we can access and animate each card individually later. Then we position it absolutely and give it a fixed width and height. Using a conditional class based on the index, we keep the first card centered, while the second card is initially placed off-screen to the right, so it can slide in during the animation. We also add perspective here to give the flip animation a proper 3D feel. Inside this, we create another div which will hold the card face components. We give it a unique class using the index, set it to full width and height, and keep it relative. We also enable Preserve 3D so the flip animation works properly in 3D space. Inside this, we render 2 card face components, one for the front side and one for the back. The second one uses the isBack flag, so it's rotated and acts as the back face of the card. After the card section, we add another full-screen spacer. This acts as a footer to give space after the animation. Now, let's move to the GSAP part. Using the Use GSAP hook, we start by setting the scope to the container ref. First, we add a quick check to make sure the container ref exists. Then we create a GSAP timeline and attach a scroll trigger to it, using the container as the trigger, starting from the top, extending the scroll for a longer duration, enabling scrub for smooth syncing, and pinning the section during the animation. Then, we animate the first card. We target flip in as 0, the dynamic class we applied earlier for the first card, and rotate it 180 degrees on the x-axis, with a duration of 1 second and no easing. The animation starts slightly after the scroll begins, at 0.5 on the timeline. Next, we transition the card groups. We animate card refs.current, 1, the second card wrapper, moving it into the center by setting left to 50% and x% to -50 over 1 second with smooth easing. At the same time, we animate card refs.current, 0, the first card wrapper, shifting it left with x% -150 and fading it out using the same easing. This creates a seamless swap between the 2 card groups. The less than sign tells GSAP to start this animation simultaneously with the previous one for a smooth swap. Now we animate the second card. We target .flipInner1, the dynamic class we applied earlier for the second card, and rotate it 180 degrees on the x-axis over 1 second with no easing. This starts a bit later on the timeline, at 2.5, so the flip happens after the first card swap. The 2.5 isn't strictly required, being in the timeline already sequences the animations. It just explicitly sets the start point. And that's it. Here's the final result of our flip card animation in action. As you scroll, each card flips seamlessly, the groups transition smoothly, and the whole interaction feels dynamic and immersive. You can use this type of animation for portfolios, product showcases, or any section where you want to reveal content step by step with style. If you enjoyed this build, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, And comment below if you want a full breakdown of the entire original website. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.